All right. Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's doing good out there. If you're any of my friends or family in the Southern California region, yikes. Some kind of surprise rain and some wild weather, some thunderstorms and lightning. Now, I'm sure most of you aren't watching from the Southern California area, and you might be surprised that us Southern Californians, we don't do well. We don't do well with weather. So whenever we get any type of weather event, it's a big freaking deal for us. So you have to bear with us when we have rain. So today's live stream, we're going to talk about the silver tsunami, and I'll get into that a little bit in just a second, and we'll get started. I have an article that we are going to go over. I have a video that we can kind of watch and look at. I'll give you my comments, and essentially we're just going to examine how everybody's favorite generation, the baby boomers, could really affect things, and just how it's going to change not just the economy, but really specifically the housing market, and what the short-term effects could be of baby boomers aging, and what also the long-term effects of baby boomers aging could be as well. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're with us. Thanks for joining. At any time, if you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and pop those into the chat, and I'm happy to respond to those. I have the chat live up on my screen right here, and if you chime in, if you have a question, just type question first so I know I can pay special attention to it. If you have any comments, if you think boomers are going to seriously disrupt the economy and the housing market, let me know. If you think they're not, if you think it's not a big deal, let me know. I would certainly love to hear from you regarding your thoughts and comments. So I think probably the first thing to talk about, and I'm going to get this on my screen so you guys see, is what exactly is the silver tsunami? And it's kind of it's an interesting thing to think about. So as we all know, baby boomers are a really large generation. In fact, they're one of the biggest generations, only really second to millennials. But honestly, baby boomers and millennials are like neck and neck for whatever the larger group is. And, we all hear about the boomer comments, and, we hear about different things about, oh, boomer this, boomer that. And one thing I want to make clear is obviously this shouldn't be like a millennial versus boomer thing. Every generation loves to hate on the next generation, which, is kind of weird to me and kind of interesting. And it's probably not the best thing in the world, to be honest with you, but it is what it is. So make sure, our parents are boomers as a millennial, so obviously we got to love boomers a little bit, right? They put us here. So I'm going to zoom in on this just so that we can see, make it a little bit larger for everyone. So we're going to talk about the silver tsunami, and what is that? So the silver tsunami, also known as the gray tsunami, the silver wave, the gray wave, all that good stuff, is used to describe population aging, specifically baby boomers reaching the age of 65 or older. This demographic will include a massive expansion to the number of people living in first world nations over the age of 80. The silver tsunami metaphor has been used in popular media and scholarly literature to refer to the late 20th century demographic phenomenon of population aging in major media platforms, including The Economist, Forbes, all these different things. The phrase has also been used to refer more specifically to health and economic implications, which is what we're going to talk about, associated with population aging by major medical publications, including all of these journals and so on and so forth. So again, we're going to talk about more so the idea behind the economy, and really housing is what we're really going to talk about. I have another article basically that we're going to see right here in a second. So this is the one that I really wanted to kind of get into on and what really sparked my desire to have this live stream, in terms of what is the silver tsunami, and a term that I've heard that's kind of interesting called boomergeddon, which is like, I love a good mashup of words, and boomergeddon is a really interesting one to me. It basically, again, it's this idea of how will boomergeddon affect housing. And I think it's important to think about this in two different ways, right? Like there's the short-term effect of boomers and housing, and then there's the long-term effect. And we're going to kind of take a look at both of those. This first one is going to talk about the little bit longer term play. We're going to talk about, into the 2030s. And then we're going to take a look at a YouTube video that was done by CBS. And it's going to talk about more of what's gone on in the last year or so with boomers. The too long didn't read version is long term, it looks better for millennials and home buyers. Short term, not as good. But again, we'll get into all that. We'll break it down. We'll dive into it. And again, if you have any questions, comments anytime, just let me know. Okay, so this is from a publication called Fast Company, and a big shift awaits the housing market. 9 million boomers to sell their homes by 2035. And this is part of that silver tsunami. Now, as you'll see in this article, they don't really refer to it as a silver tsunami, but they give it a different name. The silver tsunami is more like a tide with a gradual reduction phasing in over several years, say Freddie Mac economists. Freddie Mac, if you don't know, which this is probably some repeat information for those of you that have tuned into my videos and my live streams before, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, those are the institutional lending houses that are tied to our federal government, and our federal government has mortgage-backed securities, and Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae are the ones that kind of put all that together. So most home loans are with one of the two entities and outlets, unless you obviously don't have a loan and you purchase your home cash, or you have like a private money loan or something like that. So Freddie Mac is like one of the authorities on housing trends, housing news, and sort of housing forecasts, because really all they do is loans and housing. So one of the thoughts with the silver tsunami was that, and we saw this kind of back in the pandemic or coming out of the pandemic, boomers are going to start selling their homes, and they are going to start downsizing or going into retirement homes, and it's going to free up a lot of inventory. And when that inventory comes onto the market, it's going to soften up prices. And frankly, we're not seeing that really at all. Boomers are staying in their homes longer. They're aging in place longer. And we'll get into some of those reasons as we break down this article and as we watch the video. So there will be 9.2 million fewer baby boomer homeowner households by 2035, according to a recent analysis published by Freddie Mac. Again, that's not 9.2 million fewer baby boomers, but 9.2 million fewer baby boomer homeowner households. And this is a lot to digest, because they're not just saying homeowners, but homeowner households. And again, we'll kind of get into that too a little bit more. While economists at Freddie Mac estimate that the number of baby boomer homeowner households will decline from 32 million in 2022 to 23 million in 2035, they don't anticipate this picking up steam for a few more years. They say that what some have called a silver tsunami will really be more of a gradual reduction, which honestly makes sense. I mean, right now in this climate, what would entice a boomer to just up and move and sell their home and go somewhere else? And the answer is, well, not really a whole lot. I mean, interest rates aren't super favorable. Affordability isn't super favorable. Inventory is just really tight, and especially for the inventory that boomers are looking for. A lot of the new inventory that's coming online is new homes, and new homes are great, but a lot of them are multi-story, especially when you're in urban or suburban environments. Now, in the less densely populated rural areas, and depending on where you are in the United States, we are seeing homes that are single story. But in a lot of the suburban and urban areas, we are seeing a lot of 2-level and 3-level homes, condominiums, townhomes, because honestly, a lot of developers are going after density, and you can get more square footage in a smaller footprint if you build up. So boomers are having a hard time with that, because that is exactly what they don't want. They do not want to have a home that's multi-story. They want to have single-story living. As they age, stairs become not only an inconvenience, but quite honestly, a hazard. So the new inventory that's coming on, not super appealing to them. which means they're having to go after resale inventory, and there's just not a lot of that. And again, a lot of them don't have mortgages. They've paid off their homes, and they just don't want to take on a loan at 6 or 7%. And obviously that's understandable. So they're finding it actually more economically pleasing, and it makes a little bit more economic sense for them to maybe stay in their single story 2,400 square foot home that, heck, maybe it is worth 1.1 million or 1.2 million, but they don't have a loan on it. If they do have a loan, it's very small and it's at a very good rate. So why would they all rush to the market, flood the market, and provide a bunch of inventory? Hence, which is why they're kind of referring it to a gradual reduction and not this silver tsunami of this flood of inventory. Let's continue. Over the next 5 years, the decline is more modest, and we will only see a reduction of 2.7 million households by 2028. In this sense, the silver tsunami is more like a tide with a gradual reduction phasing in over several years. While the number of people aging out of homeownership will increase in the coming years, it is more of an upward sloping trend than a disruptive spike, wrote a Freddie Mac economist in the report. So this kind of goes with saying that, again, we're not going to see baby boomers lead the silver tsunami and create this huge unleashing of inventory. We just don't see that happening, and Freddie Mac doesn't see that happening. And quite honestly, as an active real estate agent in Southern California, I also don't see that happening. I live in Claremont, which actually has an older population. And yeah, we're seeing more people age in place. Not only is it economically viable, but our medical technology is getting really good, and people are able to live longer, and they're able to live longer on their own. So again, a disruptive spike, not going to happen, but an upward sloping trend, definitely. Now, they talk about seeing a reduction of 2.7 million households by 2028. We're in 2024. 2.7 million households might sound like a lot, but there's a couple things to keep in mind here. Number one, that doesn't mean 2.7 million homes will come onto the market. It just means we're going to see a reduction of 2.7 million households. And it's a different thing. So we won't necessarily see that increase in inventory, but that could mean that households are confining. It could mean that boomers move in with their kids, which is a really common thing now. It could mean that kids move in with their baby boomers, parents. It could also mean that baby boomers are passing their homes down to their children, and it's not coming up available on the resale market. So it doesn't just mean that there's going to be 2.7 million more homes on the market by 2028. And even if we did interpret it that way, and that was going to happen, quite honestly, 2.7 million homes is a drop in the bucket as to what we actually need in terms of new inventory to fulfill the housing deficit that we do have. Remember, we as a nation stopped building homes from about 2008 until about 2012, 2013. And when I say stop building homes, I mean like literally like we were building like way below the average, not even just under average, like way, way below the average that we would normally build per year. And it's really started to catch up to us. So we still have a huge inventory deficit, and this 2.7 million number, it might help, but it's not going to bring prices crashing down or an extremely noticeable difference in affordability. The cumulative change in the number of baby boomer U.S. homeowner households as estimated by Freddie Mac. So here we can see how they're arriving at that 2.9 million, or that 9.2 million number rather. So for 2023, we only saw 300,000 really come online. And then in 2024, we're going to see 600,000. So the good news is we do see this trending line in this case, because the graph is talking about losing households. It's a negative number. So the trend line is going down. But if we inverse this and we think of households being a good thing coming online, this is a gentle slope upward. So we will get a little bit of relief. And of course, at the bottom, it says baby boomers are the generation born from 46 to 64 during the mid-20th century baby boom, which was when post-World War II happened. And we had a lot of GIs come home, the economy was very strong, and it was just supporting a lot of population growth. So we're seeing that, especially towards the early 2030s, talking about 1 million households per year. In fact, we even kind of start that in the late 20s. In 2029, from 3.4 to 4.2 to 5.1. So definitely seeing some increases. But again, all of the data that we see doesn't really support this idea of this silver tsunami, this crash, this type of flood of inventory coming to the market solely due to baby boomers. Despite some predictions of a silver tsunami in 2024, Freddie Mac only expects a 300,000 net decline this year in the number of baby boomer homeowner households. It expects this annual decline will accelerate pretty much every year for the remainder of the decade, which is what we saw in the graph above. In 2027, Freddie Mac expects a 600,000 net decline in the number of baby boomer homeowner households. In 2031, it projects a 900,000 net decline in the number of baby boomer homeowner households. And then by 2035, it expects a 1.2 million contraction, which is what we saw above. The annual decline in the number of baby boomer US homeowner households as estimated by Freddie Mac. And so again, this is just talking about the annual decline in homeowner households that's estimated. And again, it's not quite as drastic as the previous graph, but along really honestly quite the same lines that we see. So how will this baby boomer sell-off impact the US housing market? And this is really what it gets down to. And I want to preface this kind of before we get into this. It's really important to remember that the real estate and the housing market is hyper local. So while this is talking about painting a broad brushstroke over the United States kind of as a whole, it's really important to realize that your area might differ. I am in a urban suburban area. I'm in the east portion of LA County, again, in a town called Claremont. I'm about 35 miles east of downtown Los Angeles, which is obviously a very heavily populated urban area. And we might see a different effect from this than someone in the Midwest in a more rural area that's less densely populated. Now, granted, baby boomers are all over the United States and they are a huge generation. So I would be surprised if, as a whole, on average, most places didn't see an impact. I do believe that over the next 10 years, we will start to feel the impact of baby boomers, quote unquote, giving up their homes to make them available for millennials. And heck, even by that time, Gen Zs will be of ripe home buying age. For at least the next few years, economists at Freddie Mac believe that the housing demand from Gen Z and millennials can compensate for the selling of baby boomer households. In our October 2023 outlook, we presented estimates showing that there were as many as 2 million potential additional households in the millennial generation. Along with increases from Gen Z, remember what I just talked about how Gen Z is actually entering the housing market, which is a little bit crazy to think about, but it's the truth. From Gen Z, total housing demand over the next few years is likely to continue to increase even as the boomers continue to exit the market. Over at least the next 5 years, we expect the increase in the young adult homeowner households to more than offset the decline in boomer homeowner households, wrote Freddie Mac economists. And again, this has to go back with, we have a high level of demand. We have millennials that want to own homes, and Gen Z that is showing interest in owning homes. And while boomers may give up some of their homes, and that might stimulate some of the supply that we do have, it's the demand will soak up that supply. It just will. We just have too much demand. It's kind of interesting. And I was talking about this today at my weekly office meeting at my real estate office, Concierge Realty Group here in Claremont. And we were talking about sort of what we think the housing market's going to do. And we got on the topic of, at the end of the day, regardless of interest rates, we have a demand. And this idea that millennials were never going to own anything. And I heard this, and even as a millennial, I'm 34, so I'm right in that meaty portion of the millennial curve. I thought it was strange. You know, people, and when I say people, I am referring to baby boomers and economists and things like that. Oh, millennials, they don't want to own a home. They don't want to own a car. They don't want to own stuff. Well, I do believe that some of that is true. And with the advent of technology, rideshare, Uber, Lyft, which I just used the other week to go to a concert, the advent of that technology does make it easier to get by that. I can't think of really one millennial that I know that doesn't own a car. And I can't think of one millennial that would just outright, state blanket, I don't want to own a home. I can understand millennials saying that right now because affordability is garbage. But I think it would be really short-sighted to say millennials aren't interested in homeownership. Obviously, that's not true because we have a ton of demand. So this idea that was kind of, I don't want to say promoted, but being talked about in the early 2000s and in the early 2010s of, millennials, they're not going to want to own a car. They're not going to want to own big ticket items. And they're certainly not going to want to own a house. That to me is absolutely bonkers. But what about further out? So again, we're looking into the future now. We kind of talked about the next, 3 to 5 years, but what about further out? Will this baby boomer sell-off affect home prices in the 2030s? Nick Shaw, CEO of Home LLC, does think so. Let's find out what Nick has to say. While we are bullish about home prices in the 2020s, we are still bearish about home prices in the long term unless immigration compensates for declining birth rates. In the 2030s, housing demand will start falling because Gen Zs will make a smaller cohort than millennials, plus will face a steeper affordability challenge. At the same time, supply will increase as boomers age. So this is kind of an interesting thought here. And again, one of the things that I talk about when we talk about the future housing, I mean, we're talking about long-term forecasting, which is really, really difficult to do. It's hard to know what the housing market is going to do next week, let alone 2 decades from now. However, with that being said, let's just take a look at some demographics. And I can let me pull up a demographic graph really quick. Let's say that 10 times fast, demographic graph. But you'll see that there's a lot of things that that determine the demand that we see. And quite honestly, demographics is one of the biggest things. And let me get this Google search in so that we can, here we go. This is what I want to share with you. And this is going to make a big difference in the housing market because this directly relates to demand. So let me put this on the screen really quick. Okay, so I think we can all see this. So this graph right here kind of shows we have boomers, and as you can see, huge, the green bar there, it's a huge kind of increase here. We're talking number. This is an incorrect. This is of the Oregon population. So this doesn't really. This is the one that we want. And I'm going to open this in a new tab and let me share this so this is a little bit bigger so that everybody can actually see this and doesn't look like garbage. One moment, please stand by. There we go. We'll get there, I promise. I promise we will. All 2 of my viewers, we will get there. This is what we want. I told you we would get there, and here we are. So this is a breakdown of basically the number of people in each generation, the rough size in the generation. This axis down here is when those generations were born. And this one down here is the ages. And then of course we can see this is the population in millions. So baby boomers, 75.52 million, quite a lot. And then we dipped down when we went to Gen X of 65.72 million. And then we went way up. We went as high as we've ever gone. 79.4 million for millennials, which were born from 99 or 81 to 99, age 16 to 34 at the time when this was put out. This was in December of 2015. So this is an older graph, but these haven't changed very much. And then we have Gen Z, born from 99 to 2015. And as you can see, there's almost, was it a 7 million person difference from millennials to Gen Z. So when the article talked about the fact that there is going to be a little less pressure when Gen Z really becomes that prime home buying age, there's going to be should be a little bit of lower demand just because there's less in that segment. And when they get to that prime home buying age of their, early to mid 30s, there's just going to be less of them. And by that time, we should have more homes, and we should have more homes, both from new builds and then also boomers giving up their homes and being in retirement facilities. So the fact that we have a lower Gen Z population that will soak up that demand, with the addition of lower birth rates, which will allow for smaller home sizes, people that can get away with living in smaller areas. It seems that in the long-term outlook, we will be able to overcome the housing demand, but in the short term, it's going to be very, very difficult. And that doesn't take into account immigration either, which obviously is a hot button issue, but we have record numbers of immigration, and it's coming from all over the world. And some of our real estate, especially in some of the major areas, is not just most coveted real estate in our nation, but the world. I mean, if you think about your major areas, Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, Miami, Chicago, Seattle, your major hubs, people from all over the world want to buy property in those areas, not just people in that state or that region. So also immigration is going to affect the demand that we do have on housing as well. So something to think about and consider further. Again, at this time, if anybody has any questions or comments about that, about what we've gone over, what's your take on housing? What's your take on the market? Do you think baby boomers are going to topple things? Do you think that the silver tsunami will occur, or do you think that you agree it's just going to be kind of a gradual increase? Go ahead, post it in the comments. I'm monitoring it, and I'd be happy to hear from you. Now we're going to kind of see the flip side to this. We are going to kind of see what the boomers have affected, not only in the short term, but in the past year and into the next year. And this is the part that's not great for millennials. If you're looking to buy a home right now, this is where it gets to be a little bit of not desirable news, because the one thing that boomers have, and they are not afraid to tell you about it, is they've got cash. I mean, they don't even just have money or assets or wealth. They literally have cash. And so those that did choose to move were able to leverage that cash and essentially negate the whole interest rate problem. So if you have a boomer that's lived in a house for 30 or 40 years, they have a ton of equity in the home, which equity just means the value of the home versus what they owe. They have a ton of equity. They may only owe, if they owe anything at all, they may only owe $50 or $100 or $150,000, and their home is worth $900,000, $1 million, or 1.1. That difference is what we refer to as equity. And they can take the cash that they have, they can take that equity, sell their home, because as we've identified, the demand is high, but the supply is low. So if you do have a home to sell right now, it's still very easy to sell it, even given the interest rate. And they're going to sell that home, they're going to take their cash, they're going to take their equity, and then they're going to go to whatever their favorite retirement area is. Maybe they're going to go move to be closer to grandchildren, and they're going to take a bunch of cash, and they're going to be able to pay cash for homes. The interest rate won't phase them. They'll be able to overbid. They'll be able to raise the price, because quite frankly, it won't matter to them and they'll just be able to buy what they want. So with that being said, I'm going to put another video here up on the screen. We're going to take a look at this, and I hope you guys will have sound. If there's someone in the chat, please let me know if you can actually hear the audio from this video. And I'm going to start this over. This is from CBS News Money Watch, and it's titled, "Are Baby Boomers Pushing Millennials Out of the Housing Market?" Let's take a look.
Millennials might be the unluckiest generation when it comes to economic growth.
Okay, let's just start there. With millennials might be the unluckiest generation when it comes to economic growth. We've seen some memes about this, and again, I'm a millennial. Some of my millennial brethren, like solidarity. I'm with you guys. It's hard out there, as we say. We graduated during one of the greatest economic recessions that the world has ever seen, certainly that the United States has ever seen, really only second to the Great Depression, which also in turn was a terrible real estate market. You know, a lot of retirements got wiped out. A lot of companies got wiped out. A lot of industries just kind of had to reset, start back at zero. So as we had millennials graduating high school and getting into college, and graduating college, the early millennials, it was just a very bleak looking environment. And it stayed that way for a long time. And then as we moved out of that, things started to get a little bit better. And then, you know, in 2020, we're hit with a pandemic. And you might think, oh, well, 2008 and 2020, those are really far apart. How could millennials be griping and moaning that those affected it? Well, we didn't recover from the 2008 economic crisis until really about 2015 or 16. It took a really long time to recover. So just as millennials get back on their feet, making money, finding that economic growth and that financial security, we have the COVID-19 pandemic, which I still don't even like talking about. I still hate that thing. It was a terrible time, and I'm pretty sure everybody would agree with me. So this gentleman is correct. Just in the first 9 seconds of this, I think he said like 3 sentences. I totally agree. Millennials got hosed with their economic growth potential. Let's continue.
Blame avocado toast for their financial shortcomings.
That's always a good idea.
But there have been a series of real life setbacks, Chanel, for these 80s and 90s babies. A recent Insider article reveals another economic struggle. They are now being outbid and pushed out of the housing market by baby boomers.
Those boomers pushing us millennials out of the housing market. So as you can see, kind of what we were talking about earlier, millennials are desperate to buy a home, but cash flush boomers are standing in their way. And quite honestly, boomers are just making it a little bit harder. Now, I do want to say that this video is it's about 11 months old now, but not a whole heck of a lot has changed. And quite honestly, I don't think that, I think this video still applies. And I do still believe that boomers are kind of flexing some of their prowess. Now, I will say that it's changed a little bit, because when we were coming out of the pandemic and we still had really low interest rates, that was when boomers could really kind of stick it to millennials, because millennials were able to buy for a short window because we still had really low interest rates. From 2020 to mid 2022, we had really low interest rates, and a lot of people did have a lot of cash on hand, a lot of savings, because we couldn't do anything. We couldn't spend money. We couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't go out. We couldn't go on vacation. We couldn't enjoy experiences. So at that time, really boomers were really sticking it to millennials. Now, as we get a little bit further on, and interest rates have increased a little bit, they're still able to kind of flex on millennials a little bit, but not in the sense that we saw a little bit earlier when interest rates were lower, and therefore millennials could be a little bit more competitive, and they were still losing to boomers that had literally pockets full of cash, like cash just overflowing from their pockets, like just trailing them as they walk down the street because they had so much cash. Let's continue.
Real estate reporter with Insider and author of that piece, James Rodriguez, joins us now to discuss.
Again, let me know if you can't hear this audio. I'm really hoping that you guys can.
So break down this generational divide. And for people who are going to be watching, guys, this who are going to say, look, if it's really just a question of the fact that baby boomers have been around longer and they've saved more money just by their longevity, that necessarily doesn't mean it's unfair, but just put it into perspective for us.
So really,
okay, so he says that it's not unfair because baby boomers have been around longer and they've been able to save more money. I get what he's saying when he's like, that's not unfair, but I mean, it's certainly a disadvantage for millennials, and baby boomers are able to utilize that advantage that they have by simply being older and having a stronger economic foothold and financial foothold. They're able to use that to their advantage, and quite obviously. And that's, again, maybe not unfair, but does kind of suck for the millennial population out there.
over the past decade, despite all the challenges that millennials have faced in the housing market, they've actually been buying more homes each year than any other generation. But we saw that
See, there's hope. Millennials have been buying. There's hope.
change last year when it was actually baby boomers who bought more homes. They accounted for 39% of home purchases, compared to millennials who saw their share fall to just 28%, down from 43% the year prior.
Okay, this is a really cool graph. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit bigger if I can. There we go. There we go. Now we're cooking. So this is a breakdown of generation share of home buyers by generation, and this is from the National Association of Realtors. This is actually a really, really cool graph. I'm going to see if I can take the closed captioning off here so we can see a little bit better. So we can see that the silent generation is very small. The silent generation is the generation above baby boomers. But as you can see, baby boomers in 22 really kind of took off. And it's this sort of, well, they're all kind of mint green, but this lighter sort of green shade here. They probably should use some better differentiating colors, but that's okay. This shade here, this green is baby boomers. And as you can see in the couple years before, baby boomers not super active, millennials very active in 2021. Remember, again, in 2020 and 2021, pretty active from millennials and also Gen X, but mostly millennials. They were, again, of that home buying age. Gen X were kind of already in their home, comfortable. Maybe this group, this segment of people, they were looking to maybe move up to their next home. But millennials putting in work on the home buying in 2020 and 2021. And again, a lot of that had to do with low interest rates and high savings. So again, they were sitting on some money. Affordability was much better at those times, and they were able to purchase homes. Just a quick note, look at the little creep that Gen Z has. As early as 2020, Gen Z started to creep in. 2020, 2021, about the same. But 2022, it looks like, I mean, there's no numbers here, but roughly double. Now, this is a small percent. I mean, right here, we're talking about this is 25% of 100% of the people that bought homes. So this is a sliver, but still, Gen Z getting active in the home buying market pretty early on. But as you can see, millennials far outweighing the boomers, and that switched in 2022.
I think that really kind of shows this divide in the advantages that older buyers have in the market right now at a time when there really aren't enough homes to accommodate this really large generation of millennials. And so we've seen, millennials really be outbid by cash buyers at a time when there's a ton of competition for homes. You have bidding wars. And when you have bidding wars, it really pays to have all cash. And that's what boomers have in the bank right now.
So what?
That's a great point. And we're still seeing that. When there are bidding wars, when there's high demand and low inventory, you get bidding wars. And in a bidding war, and I'm going to go on a little bit of a soapbox, go on a little bit of a rant here for the one person that's watching my stream. Hi to the one person out there. We're still seeing multiple offer situation. We're still seeing bidding wars. And when a bidding war occurs, the seller of a house is really looking for the highest and best price from the strongest buyer. And why not? If they've got 4, 5, 6, 10, 15 offers to choose from, or in the height of the pandemic, 30 or 40 or 50 offers or more to choose from, of course, they're going to want the highest and best, both in price and terms and buyer stability. Here's where my rant comes in. I don't know why home sellers put this huge priority and desirability on an all cash offer. I mean, think about it. When a seller sells a home, nobody's showing up at the closing with like 3 briefcases full of cash and they open them and all the cash is there and $100 bills and it's all counted up and everything. That doesn't happen. That never happens. What happens is they end up getting a wire to their account. They get a bank wire. And so this idea of all cash somehow being the strong and the best thing, oh, cash is king. Cash is king. I mean, talk about a real boomer mentality. Don't get me wrong, cash is great and cash offers are very strong and cash offers have their advantage and benefit. However, if you're working with a good agent and working with a good lender, you can make your loan offer just as good as cash. And you can work as quick as a cash offer. You can have the same flexibility as a cash offer. You can have the same security as a cash offer. So this idea that oh man, I'm a seller and I just, I had a couple bids, but the cash guy, or I took a little bit, I took 5,000 less, but it was cash. Okay. Are you actually, is he going to bring in a wheelbarrow full of $900,000 cash to buy the home? No, he's not. He's going to wire you just the same way that a lender is going to wire you when there's a loan. It makes no difference. You get the same money the same way. But when you're in a multi-offer scenario and there's a bidding war, sellers love to see cash. And as we've already established a few times prior in this stream, boomers have cash. They've got a lot of it. And so when they go to this bidding war, not only do they have the resources to outbid younger home buyers, but they can do it in cash. And for some reason, like I said, sellers and home buyers love that. They just love the idea of cash.
What happened that changed the trend last year?
Well, we saw this survey from the National Association of Realtors. It covers the latter half of 2021 and the first half of 2022. And when you think back to that time, that was really a time of record low mortgage rates. And so you saw kind of a flood of buyers. And it's also, when you think about the millennial generation, it's the largest living generation, 72 million people. And they're all kind of right in that sweet spot for home buying, kind of late 20s to early 40s. And so you have this crush of people looking for homes. You have baby boomers who are looking to settle into their retirement property or move closer to family and friends. You have everybody kind of reevaluating their living situation during the pandemic. And so it just created a really, a tough environment for millennials to purchase a home.
But,
yeah, that right there. I mean, he said it really well. And we had all these people reevaluating, including boomers, and they were looking to do something, and we just had a very frothy market. It's calmed down quite a bit since then, but nonetheless, it's still crazy. And I'm going to talk about what, the last 10 minutes or so of the stream, I'm going to talk about sort of what I'm seeing in my local marketplace here and what I'm experiencing. But the market has calmed, but still wild out there.
I think when we do stories like this, we have to sort of put some context onto it and sort of step out and take a wider view, because the baby boomers came of age in the late 1960s and early 1970s in the post-World War II era, when this country went from being not an economic superpower before World War II to being the superpower, the preeminent superpower in the world. And so what happened? These baby boomers came home from the war. The greatest generation came home from the war. They had children, and those children were the benefits of the things that the greatest generation were given. They were given low-cost mortgages, not Black people, but some people in this country were given opportunities to own their first homes and to have jobs that they retired from. And so that provided an economic springboard for the children of the greatest generation, which are the baby boomers. But subsequent generations, we're not living in that era now, where
this is a really good point. There we go. This is a really good point that he brings up, that baby boomers kind of had their cake and ate it too. They were able to have some of the benefits of a economy that just exploded in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And as they were coming of age, There will always be economic hardships. Of course, people talk about the oil embargo in the 70s. They'll talk about inflation, crazy inflation in the 80s with interest rates in the high teens. So there's always going to be economic hardships and difficulties. But overall, as a whole, the host brings up a really, really good point of the greatest generation, i.e. those that came back from World War II, the GI generation. They were afforded great opportunity in terms of getting payments from the military for their service, offered very low cost loans. We were going through a huge time of building. We were building a lot of homes. I mean, I don't know, again, about your neighborhood. And my neighborhood here was primarily developed between 1945 and 1970, which is the post-war generation. I mean, homes were going up in tracks. I mean, like a factory. And so we didn't have a supply glut that we do. Demand was relatively stable. It was growing, but not at a crazy pace. And so they were able to own homes far easier with a far less barrier to entry than what we see now.
There's the GI Bill, and there are these low interest rate mortgages that are being provided. It's a different time. So is it fair to compare generations today to generations previous?
Well, I think it's important to remember where millennials started and where a lot of their careers began, which is kind of right in the aftermath of the Great Recession. So that
bingo. This is what I was talking about just a little bit earlier. Millennials were a little bit, the hands were tied a little bit. And they really got off to an unfortunate start because, well, they came of age in one of the most horrendous economic times that the globe has ever seen.
That hurt their job prospects early on. That kind of, we saw those impacts linger for a decade. And at the same time, a lot of these issues come down to a lack of homes right now. And home builders were actually building at a rate each year of about half of what they were in the decade after the Great Recession. They were building at about a rate of about half of what they were doing the 3 decades prior. And so we knew that this generation of millennials was coming. It's this huge generation. We knew they were going to be aging into their prime home buying years right now, but we just weren't building enough homes for them. And so then you saw all those factors kind of converge during the pandemic when you had millennials start to think, okay, now I want to buy a home. The homes aren't there. And now I'm competing with all these other people.
And I don't know if your data shows any of this, but I'm also just thinking about a lot of friends in my circle of millennial groups, and fewer people want to buy homes now.
Well, I was going to say that's true too.
I mean,
I'm a Gen Xer. I'm not interested in buying a home because again, that sort of
again, this is an interesting take, and I think that this also has to do with honestly regional feelings, and I would guess that because this is a major network show, this is probably in a very suburban area, and it's quite possible that people in that area don't find interest in owning a home because it's going to be really, really, really expensive for what you're going to get. You're not going to get much. And depending on what you do for work, maybe you might have to move, pick up and move to a different area. I think as a whole, if you were able to poll millennials and the question was, are you interested in home ownership? I think the majority would be, yes, we are. But it's interesting to hear these people's opinion on it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think millennials want to own homes? Are you a millennial and do you want to own a home? Let me know.
That propaganda, for lack of a better word, where it was, hey, the American dream is owning a home and having a car in a garage and having a refrigerator and a color TV. I don't think people think like that anymore. So to me, the American dream represents other things besides the home, the 2.5 kids, the dog, and the front lawn. I mean, there's other things that I think people are interested in. So why have millennials zeroed in on home buying?
I do think you see younger generations start to reconsider, and then maybe some people, they saw what happened to their predecessors during the Great Recession. They think, okay, maybe I don't. Really quick,
he goes, so why are millennials, all this stuff about how the American dream has changed and it doesn't, and first off, that's his opinion, which is okay. We've all got opinions, and it's interesting to hear people's opinions on it. But when he goes, why do you think that might change? Well, maybe it's because homeowners are 40 times more wealthy than people who rent. And I'm not just making that up. That's an actual statistic. Possibly because home ownership provides stability, not just financially, but in your living situation. perhaps because it affords the ability to modify a home exactly how you want when you want to do it. You don't have to ask a landlord about painting walls, or if you can hang a picture here or there. And usually it affords a little bit more privacy. Typically, when we think renting, we think apartment, townhome, or condo. Of course, you can rent a single family home, but that's typically not the type of product that people rent. However, it varies. So when he says, why do you think someone might want to own a home, or millennial might want to own a home? Well, there's a lot of good reasons. Let's see what James says.
Don't want to pour all my assets into this one thing, but I think surveys also show that a lot of millennials do still want to buy homes. I think that's still the most popular way of building wealth in America. And when you think about generational wealth, a lot of that does start with owning a home, you know, in theory, kind of passing it on to your children. And that's kind of really how you get this cycle going, where you continue to build wealth. And so I think it does remain a goal for a lot of people.
Well, we could continue chatting with you, but we've got to wrap this up for now. But James, lots of interesting points there. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks,
we appreciate
James.
it.
Thanks so much.
So there you have it, guys. You know, it's an interesting video, and clearly in the long term, let's recap for those of you that are catching the end of this. To recap, you know, baby boomers and the silver tsunami, you know, will it topple the housing market? Probably not. Is it going to affect the housing market? Yeah, absolutely so. I think just a couple of years ago, within the last year or two, we did think that this silver tsunami was going to really affect the housing market. It really was going to be not a problem, but it was really going to have it was really going to change things. And perhaps we were going to have this flood of inventory from boomers that are going, I've got a ton of equity, I've got a ton of money, I'm selling the big house and I'm buying the condo in Florida, I'm buying the condo in Arizona, I'm moving closer to my kids in Tennessee or wherever it is. And now we're seeing that that's really not the case. And it looks to be a little bit more like the silver tide that will gently roll in and maybe get a little bit higher, but it's not going to disrupt things. And additionally, we're not going to see any decrease in demand in homes. And therefore, this silver tsunami and this rush of inventory from boomers, not only is it not likely, but even if it did happen, the demand that we have would chew it up rather quickly, which is why we haven't had a housing crash yet. It's crazy to watch the crash bros say, "Oh, houses are going to crash." We've been hearing this since 2020. A lot of crash bros, which we affectionately call them, say that it's impossible. Real estate has to crash. They said that in 2020. First off, they said that in 2018. They said it in 2019. They said it in 2020, in 21, in 22, in 23, and here we are in 24. Where sure, affordability is not great, but the prices of homes are not going down. They might not be accelerating as quickly as they once were, but that's probably a good thing because they're really high right now as it is. Now, in the long term, will boomers affect the housing market? Yeah, absolutely. They're one of the biggest generations we've ever had, second only to millennials. So, of course, if boomers do decide to, move on from their large homes and finally go to, retirement communities or downsize to condos, or maybe they might decide to rent because maybe they don't know where they want to be because they might want to split their time between over here with these grandchildren and over there with those grandchildren. Then we could see a little bit of relief coupled with that demographic shift that we saw. So again, let me know in the comments. What do you think? Do you think boomers are going to have an effect on the housing market? Do you think this silver tsunami thing is going to cause a huge ripple in supply and demand? Or do you think that it's really not going to make much of a difference and we're going to continue having kind of what we have? Let me know in the comments. I'm monitoring them right now. And then additionally, I just want to also kind of really quickly touch on what I'm seeing in my marketplace, just kind of give you guys a market snapshot. And I'm a part of a lot of real estate groups on Facebook and also just network with a lot of agents. I talk to a lot of different agents all throughout the United States. And so I can kind of give you an idea of what's going on kind of just throughout the US. In my specific area, again, which is I'm in a town called Claremont, California. So I'm about 30 miles east of downtown Los Angeles. And it's a suburban kind of urban suburban area. And we have very low inventory and we have very high demand. when I say very high demand, not like pandemic demand, that was unicorn years, but we still have a lot of demand. And what I mean by that is we've had a couple open houses recently for some listings that we've had, and we're seeing, I mean, almost record amounts of people at open houses. A 2-hour open house for just a 4-bed, 2-bath home, 2,000 square feet, good condition, nothing special, nothing remarkable, just a home, listed right around $1 million. And we had like 80 people in 2 hours come through. That property that I'm talking about specifically had, I think, 8 or 9 offers in total, and it's going to sell for $100,000 over the asking price, which to me is absolutely insane. But that's just one example. Another example, we had a house, very similar, 3-bed, 2-bath, about 1,800 square feet, very standard ranch style home here in the Los Angeles County area, located on kind of a semi-busy street in our town. And it was listed for just a tick under $1 million. It was listed at $998. And it too had multiple offers, and it too sold for over ask. This one only sold for $50K over the asking price. So still a lot there. Exactly. This is a great point, Michelle. But when will that happen? Who knows? The next 10 years? Yeah. Referring to the silver tsunami. Yeah. And you're exactly right. It's one of these things where probably over the course of the next 10 years is when we'll start to see that. And that will couple too with demographics. So not only will we see a little bit of release of inventory from the boomers, but also we're going to see millennials be kind of more set with their housing situation, and Gen Z is just a little bit smaller. So it's definitely a possibility that we're going to see that in the future, but no time in the very near future. That's absolutely for sure. And so, right now what we're seeing is still a lot of competition, multiple offers, and acceleration in pricing. And so it's one of these things where houses are still very coveted, especially if you're in a good neighborhood with good schools. And in my area, if you have a home and it's under $900,000 and it's priced well for what it is and it's presented well, it will fly off the shelf. And that goes for a lot of areas. I was talking to an agent in Dallas, Texas, earlier today, and she goes, if you have a house under 700,000 in whatever her little suburb of Dallas is, it immediately gone. We're already seeing the spring market in full effect. We're seeing multiple offers. We're seeing over asking price bids, and that makes it difficult on consumers. I am in escrow right now with some clients, and luckily we were able to get our offer in at a really good time. It was still kind of early in the year. This is about a month ago, and the home got a lot of activity, but we were the only offer, so we were able to not have to pay over the asking price for the property, and it worked out good. And buyers are still very fortunate to have the escrow that they do have if they are in escrow. So again, we're seeing some softening. We're not seeing things like we saw obviously in the pandemic era or the unicorn years of 2020 to 2022, where it was like you literally had to fight people. I mean, even just to get in the home, just to see the home, it was crazy. We're definitely not seeing that, but supply and demand, and prices, I believe, are going to continue to go up, especially with the Fed announcing today that rate cuts are still on the table. We all thought at the end of last year in 2023, we thought, oh, we're definitely going to see multiple rate cuts, maybe as early as March. That didn't pan out because the economy just keeps on rolling. Maybe think we'll see rate cuts in June. That doesn't look quite as likely now, although it's still possible. But the Fed, Jerome Powell did meet with Congress, and he did say, we still, think that we're going to look closely at cutting rates later this year, which is a pretty good indication that that's going to happen. Before I leave you guys, I want to bring up one more tool. And I like checking this about every week. And I talked about this in the last live stream. So if you were in the last live stream, you're going to be like, Joe, why are you doing this again? But this is a really cool tool. I like it quite a bit. I'm a little bit of a graph person and a data junkie. So we are going to do this. And this is the CME groups. The CME group is a group of really, really smart people that know a lot more about interest rates and algorithms and formulas than I do. But this is the tool from the CME group. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for you guys so you can see. There we go. So this is the target rate probabilities that for the March 20th, 2024 Fed meeting and what they will do with the current federal funds rate, which, as we know, dictates heavily the mortgage interest rate. So as of right now, there's a 95% that as of the March 20th meeting, they're going to keep rates current at the 5.25 to 5.5 region. So only a 5% chance that they're going to decrease that. Again, these are just projections. These are just made based on a lot of information and a lot of data that this group has at the time. And these change, and they change, I don't want to say often, but they change whenever new information and new data comes out. And one thing I like to do is let's just, we're talking about June. Let's take the June 12th meeting. So the June 12th meeting, look at this. Look at that. So the CME group thinks that there is a 25% chance that rates stay the same. They think that there's a 56.8% chance that rates could decrease by 1/4 to 1/2 point. And again, this is the federal funds rate will decrease. And there's even a 17% chance that it could decrease down to 4.75 to 5%. If this happens, we're going to see a shakeup in the housing market. The Fed's kind of got their back against a wall. They know they have acknowledged that their increase in interest rates has really put the freeze on the housing market, and it's made it very difficult for affordability and for people who are looking to buy and sell houses. Real estate is one of the backbones of the American economy, and it's a pain point for a lot of people right now. And the Fed knows this, and that's because the Fed raised rates. However, they were hoping that when rates were increased, that affordability would increase and that prices would come down. They did not, because again, supply and demand. So if they do decrease rates, I can almost certainly guarantee you that we're going to see a heavy increase in home prices, because as rates come down, buying power will go further. Homes will then appear to be more affordable. And then when that happens, more buyers will come into the market. Some more homes might increase in inventory, but probably not a whole lot. We're still so low in the first place. As more buyers come into the market because things appear more affordable, you get bidding wars. And what happens in a bidding war, we talked about this, the price goes up. So just a very interesting tool that kind of talks about what this group thinks that interest rates could potentially do in the future. Okay, guys. Well, I really hope that you enjoyed this stream, and I hope that you found some of this information useful. If you are watching, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate it. Oh, we have a late comment. Yeah, 2 people are watching. Isn't that crazy? You and one other person, this guy, Jeffrey. 2 people. It's pretty good. That's double my last live stream, Jeffrey. So I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you watching. And thanks for dropping a comment. Anyways, I appreciate you guys' time, and I hope you found it useful. We'll be live probably again next week, talking about the latest that's going on in the real estate world. And I will be providing whatever information I can. And we'll be talking a little bit about the local market again as well. But we'll just be dissecting whatever the latest news is, and we'll be talking about more real estate. I hope you enjoyed this. And if you're interested in more home buying and home selling tips and just real estate guidance and advice, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all again very soon. Have a good evening.